Welcome to Lifespan, the weekly podcast that digs up the dirt on the most outrageous, chaotic, and downright WTF lives ever lived.
All told in a fun and fascinating way.
Share, rate, and follow the show for more wild stories. Forget what you learned in school. This is history's unhinged side.
And today, we're really going deep.
Today, you're embarking on a truly bizarre journey into the shocking story of Gilles de Rais, a 15th-century French nobleman.
You know, it's hard to believe. Here you have this national hero, celebrated, right? A valiant warrior, a key companion of Joan of Arc.
That was the public image, Gilles de Rais.
Exactly. But, well, the sources we have reveal something utterly terrifying behind that facade. Allegations of abduction, torture, or sexual abuse.
And murder of potentially hundreds of innocent children.
Hundreds. It's staggering. The testimonies paint this truly mind-melting picture.
Right. So our mission on this bizarre journey is to try and unpack how a life like that could even happen.
How does someone go from that kind of heroism to that?
We need to explore the historical context, maybe that sheds some light, and understand the legacy of this deeply disturbing figure.
Let's try. Where do we even begin with someone like Gilles de Rais? His early life, I suppose, before the alleged horrors.
Yeah, let's start there. What kind of background did he come from? Was he always destined for this kind of darkness?
Well, he was born around 1404, and his family connections put him right at the absolute top of Breton society.
Okay, so serious nobility.
Oh, absolutely. He was connected to two incredibly powerful families, the Lavals and the Crayons. This meant he inherited just immense privilege from the moment he was born.
Vast estates, incredible wealth.
Right. The idea of having to, work for a living, completely foreign concept. He was born into a world of just total material security and social power.
So right from the start, he's set apart. But you mentioned his early life took some unexpected turns, something about his parents.
Yes, that's really crucial. His first education was pretty standard for nobles then. Priests taught him literacy, Latin.
The usual stuff for the elite.
Right. But that stable period just ended abruptly in 1415. Both his parents died.
Oh, wow. So young.
Yeah. And here's where it gets interesting. Gilles' father had actually worried about the influence of Gilles' maternal grandfather, Jean de Rais. He thought the guy was unscrupulous.
So his own father had reservations.
Explicitly. He wanted a cousin to be Gilles' guardian, not the grandfather. But despite his father's wishes, young Gilles ended up under Jean de Rais' guardianship.
Okay, so this is where our bizarre journey might take an early dark turn. This grandfather wasn't exactly a role model.
Not according to some accounts, no. Allegedly, he introduced Gilles to, let's say, the darker arts of the nobility, things like extortion, even banditry.
Extortion and banditry, that's quite a shift from Latin lessons.
It really is. And what's very telling is that Gilles himself, later on, actually blamed his descent into what he called evil on this time.
He pointed the finger at his grandfather.
He claimed it was the lack of proper guidance, the idleness under his grandfather, that led him to indulge in illicit acts and grave sins.
So maybe a lack of a moral compass right from those formative years.
It suggests that, doesn't it? A period where maybe the lines were blurred, where he saw power used in less than noble ways. It wasn't just privilege. It seems like maybe the moral foundation was shaky.
Okay, so we have this background. Immense wealth, early trauma, questionable guardianship. And then somehow he becomes a national hero. How does that happen?
It's a massive pivot, isn't it? Despite this potentially troubled upbringing, he genuinely distinguished himself on the battlefield.
How did he get started militarily?
Well, in 1427, his grandfather actually used his influence to get Gilles a position as a military captain under Duke Louis III of Anjou.
Okay, so connections still help.
Definitely. And he fought against English garrisons, captured fortresses. Accounts suggest he was brave, tactically skilled. But the real game changer was Joan of Arc.
Ah, yes. Joan of Arc, the name everyone knows. What was his role with her?
He was apparently crucial in lifting the siege of Orleans in 1429, fought right alongside her.
A pivotal moment in French history.
Absolutely. And he continued with her through the Loire Valley campaigns, helping retake towns from the English. His contribution was so significant.
That he got recognized.
Big time. In that same year, 1429, he was awarded the rank of Marshal of France.
Marshal of France. Wow, that's the absolute top tier, isn't it?
Pretty much the highest military honor you could get. And his success didn't stop there. Even after Joan was captured, he helped lift the siege of Lagny in 1432.
So we have this celebrated war hero, deeply connected to France's biggest victories. Joan of Arc's companion.
Right. And it's this complete jarring contrast between that image, the hero, and the later allegations. That's what makes this whole story so disturbing, so hard to wrap your head around.
It feels like two different people entirely. But were there any signs back then, any whispers that maybe something wasn't quite right beneath the surface?
There were definitely signs of, well, extreme behavior. Maybe not pointing directly to murder yet, but certainly excess. By the time he was only 20, his own family was worried.
Worried about what?
His spending. They called it insane expenses. Think about this. By 1432, his estimated income was around 800,000 livres a year.
Which was a lot back then.
An absolutely colossal fortune, like could fund armies kind of money, and yet within just 2 years, he'd apparently blown through a huge chunk of it.
Good grief. What was he spending it on? Just living large?
Seems like it was a bit of everything, turned up to 11. Sources mention these extravagant trips to Nantes with massive entourages, maintaining an incredibly ornate private chapel, probably rivaling actual cathedrals, and sponsoring these huge, elaborate mystery plays.
Mystery plays, like theater.
Yeah, massive theatrical productions. Very popular then, often religious themes, but incredibly expensive. Hundreds of actors, complex sets, costumes.
So just burning through cash.
So much so that by 1435, King Charles II himself had to step in.
The king got involved.
Yes. He put Gilles under a legal interdict because his family was complaining so much, basically stopped him from selling or mortgaging any more property.
Wow. That seems like a pretty major red flag, right? A sign of maybe instability or just there's this insatiable need for bigger and bigger sensations.
You could definitely read it that way. A lack of control, perhaps. An appetite for extremes that was already costing him literally.
Okay, so his personal life was already marked by this extreme excess. Now, to really get the context for this bizarre journey, we need to look at the world he lived in, 15th century France. That was a rough time, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely brutal. France was deeply scarred by the 100 Years' War. Decades of conflict.
Which meant what for society? Destruction, chaos.
All of that. Widespread devastation, major social shifts. The old nobility was actually weakening in some ways while the monarchy was getting stronger. It was just a volatile, violent era.
And in that kind of environment, maybe extreme cruelty wasn't as shocking, especially from a powerful noble.
It's conceivable, sadly, particularly cruelty towards the lower classes. It might have been initially overlooked or just seen as part of the general background noise of violence and war.
Because the social structure was so rigid.
Incredibly rigid. The ancient regime with its estates, the nobility, the second estate had immense power, privileges, tax exemptions, huge local influence.
And the lives of ordinary people, especially poor children,
likely held very little value in the eyes of that elite. That stark inequality is probably part of why disappearances of poor children, his alleged victims, didn't immediately trigger a massive investigation.
A grim reality of the times. What about the spiritual side of things? It was deeply religious, but also kind of weird.
It was complex. Deep Catholic faith was absolutely central to everything. But running alongside that was this growing fascination with the occult.
Alchemy, astrology.
Exactly. And even trying to summon demons. It wasn't unheard of, especially for people seeking power or knowledge outside the church's official channels.
But the church condemned all that, right? Magic, heresy.
Oh, strongly. But the line could get blurry for some. Oh. And Gilles de Rais' deep dive into Satanism and the occult, that was a massive offense in their eyes, possibly even more shocking to the ecclesiastical authorities than the murders.
Because it was an attack on God, on the whole worldview.
Precisely. It struck right at the core of their belief system.
Such a strange mix, intense piety, and this dark undercurrent. And what about childhood itself? How were kids seen back then?
Very differently than today. Especially lower-class kids. They were often seen as just miniature adults, expected to work young, contribute to survival.
Not really a protected stage of life.
Not in the way we think of it, especially for the poor. And child mortality rates were tragically high. So, again, sadly, the disappearance of poor children might not have immediately rung huge alarm bells.
It wasn't uncommon for boys to be sent off as servants or pages anyway, right?
Exactly. So you have this backdrop. War-torn, deeply unequal, spiritually complex, different view of childhood. It sets the stage for how these alleged horrors could perhaps fester before exploding.
Okay, let's turn to that explosion. The truly horrific part of this bizarre journey, the unraveling. How did it all come crashing down?
Well, despite his power and fame, the rumors didn't completely go away. Complaints from parents about missing kids did eventually start reaching the authorities.
So people were talking, noticing.
Gradually, yes. But it seems the disappearances had been happening for years. What actually triggered his arrest wasn't directly the missing children, oddly enough.
What was it then?
It was a violent dispute in May 1440 with a clergyman, Jean of Arc. Gilles apparently assaulted him inside a church and illegally occupied his old castle.
Attacking a priest in a church and seizing property.
Yeah. That blatant defiance of both the church and the Duke of Brittany's authorities seems to have been the final straw.
So his own arrogance, in a way, brought him down, not the alleged hidden crimes.
It certainly looks like the catalyst. He was arrested in Nantes on September 15th, 1440, and then he faced 2 trials at the same time.
2 trials?
Yes, an ecclesiastical one for heresy, because of the Satanism stuff, and a civil one for the murders.
And the details, the horrifying details came out during these trials.
Mostly from his own inner circle, his accomplices.
They testified against him. Who were they?
People like his valets, Horia and Poitou, his personal conjurer, Francois Prelati, even his priest, Blanchette, and a woman named Perrine Martin, who supposedly procured children for him.
Wow. His whole entourage turned on him. What did they say?
Their testimonies were gruesome. They described the abduction, the torture, the sexual abuse, and the murder of just scores of children.
How many? Did they give numbers?
The estimates, based on the testimonies, go as high as 200. Mostly boys, usually between 7 and 15 years old.
200. It's just unimaginable. What kinds of acts did they describe? I mean, how horrific are we talking?
They described ritualistic killings, children being suspended, mutilated, severed heads allegedly displayed as trophies.
My God.
And what's really disturbing is how consistent the accounts were, even between different witnesses, the level of detail.
Yeah.
It's chilling, even if you factor in the possibility of coercion or torture influencing the confessions.
The consistency suggests a horrifying pattern, doesn't it?
It strongly points towards systematic abuse and murder over a long period.
How did Gilles himself react in court? Facing these accusations, hearing his own people testify. Did he deny it all?
Initially, he was defiant, refused to even recognize the church court's authority, said he'd rather just be hanged.
So they excommunicated him.
They did, but then he seemed to have a change of heart. He relented, acknowledged the court, and then confessed.
He confessed.
To everything.
Reportedly broke down, tearfully asked for pardon, the excommunication was lifted, but then
He changed his mind again.
he personally recanted, admitted only to less significant facts, as he put it, but then in the civil trial he confessed again, supposedly adding even more horrific details.
It sounds completely chaotic. Confessing, recanting, confessing again. What was the final verdict?
Guilty on both counts. Heresy in the ecclesiastical court, murder in the civil court,
And sentence?
death by hanging, with his body to be burned afterwards. The execution was set for October 26, 1440, in Nantes.
How did he face the end? Was he defiant? Remorseful? Accounts suggest he seemed contrite. Composed, even. He apparently asked the crowd for forgiveness.
But there's a final twist, isn't there? Something about his body.
A really bizarre one. After he was hanged, but before the body could be burned, 4 noble women intervened.
Noble women, what did they do?
They basically rescued his body from the flames, had it placed in a coffin, arranged for a proper burial in a church.
Why would they do that? After everything.
It's hard to say for sure. Maybe lingering respect for his family name, or maybe society just couldn't fully reconcile the hero they once knew with the monster he allegedly became. It really highlights that deep conflict.
A chilling end to a chilling story. It just leaves you asking, why? Why would someone do this? How does a war hero become this alleged monster?
Yeah.
Let's get into the theories.
Yeah, the why is the huge haunting question, and people have been trying to answer it for centuries. Modern psychology might offer some lenses.
Like psychopathy, lack of empathy.
Potentially. That kind of diagnosis, lack of empathy, cruelty, seems to fit the alleged crimes. And you could look at the early trauma, too. Losing his parents, the grandfather's influence.
That's contributing factors.
Possibly. But we have to be really careful diagnosing across centuries, you know? Different world, different understanding of behavior.
Right, it's not like we can put him on a couch. What about the occult stuff, the Satanism? How does that fit in?
That's a major theory. His deep involvement with alchemy, trying to summon demons with Prelati, it suggests a possible link between the crimes and some kind of dark ritual.
So maybe he genuinely believed he could gain power or wealth through these acts. Or was it just a cover?
That's the debate. Was it real belief, a disturbed mind seeking power, or just an excuse for sadism? We don't know for sure. But the occult was definitely a huge part of his trial and his image.
Deeply unsettling either way. Now, you mentioned lingering questions. Are there actual conspiracy theories, people who think he was innocent?
There are, yes. The main arguments usually focus on the confession being potentially coerced by torture. That's a serious point.
Okay, that makes sense to question.
Others point to motives, like the Duke of Brittany stood to gain financially from Gilles' downfall. Maybe it was a setup.
A powerful rival taken down?
It's been suggested. Plus, some historians claim there were irregularities in the trial itself. And then you get more fringe theories, like Margaret Murray linking him to some ancient fertility cult.
Right, those sound a bit more out there.
They're generally considered less historically grounded. But the point is, while the evidence against him seems substantial, the circumstances weren't perfect, leaving room for doubt for some.
So, not a completely closed case for everyone. What about literary takes? I read something linking his downfall to Joan of Arc's death.
Yeah, that's a fascinating interpretation. Some analyses see his relationship with Joan as this pivotal, almost overwhelming experience. Her execution becomes this massive trauma.
A catastrophic marriage, metaphorically speaking.
Exactly. And his later crimes become this twisted way of trying to process that loss, or maybe even recapture the intensity of that connection, perhaps by recreating loss and death in horrific ways.
Trying to reunite with your spirit through darkness, that's profoundly disturbing.
It's a psychological interpretation, trying to make sense of the senseless.
Okay, regardless of the why, his story definitely didn't just end in 1440. He cast a long shadow. Let's talk about that legacy. The echoes through time.
Absolutely. The biggest echo is probably the Bluebeard fairy tale.
Ah, yes. The rich nobleman with the secret room of horrors.
Right. Whether Gilles was the direct inspiration is debated by folklorists, but the parallels are undeniable. Wealthy guy, castle, horrific crimes against vulnerable people.
It cemented him as an archetype, didn't it? The monstrous aristocrat.
Definitely. He became a symbol of that kind of depraved power. And that image fueled tons of cultural depictions.
In books, movies.
All sorts. Literature has portrayed him as everything from a wild beast to this decadent, intellectual, evil figure. Thinkers like Huysmans, Georges Bataille, they grappled with him.
And in films.
Often shows up alongside Joan of Arc, sometimes with hints of the darkness to come. And then, yeah, horror films, even anime like Fate Zero, really lean into the macabre, the occult side.
It sounds like every generation tries to understand him in its own way. How is he remembered in France itself today?
It's complex. The early heroism is known, but it's completely overshadowed by the crimes. He's mostly remembered as just a figure of extreme cruelty. A dark footnote to Joan of Arc's story.
Any weird traditions associated with him?
There used to be one near Nantes, apparently. Parents would symbolically whip their kids on the anniversary of his execution.
Seriously, why?
As a grim reminder, I guess, of the consequences of sin. Pretty dark.
That is truly bizarre. And what about in criminal history? Does he hold any significance there?
He's often pointed to as one of the earliest documented serial killers.
Really? Based on the pattern?
Yeah, the pattern of abduction, torture, murder over time. It fits the modern definition pretty well. So in a grim way, his case might have helped shape how we understand and study serial crime later on.
A terrible legacy, but a significant one in that field. Okay, before we wrap up this bizarre journey, let's hit some of the really strange specific details. The deep cuts.
Right. Get this. His conjurer, Prelati, supposedly gave him a silver box with black powder, a gift from a demon, he claimed.
The demon's gift, okay.
And weirder still, years after Joan of Arc died, around 1439, Gilles apparently hired a woman to impersonate her. Had a fake Joan of Arc hanging around.
A fake Joan of Arc? What on earth for? That's beyond bizarre.
Isn't it? And the irony, in 1433, he funded the building of a chapel of the Holy Innocents, complete with a boys' choir.
Holy Innocents, given the allegations. Wow.
The disconnect is jarring. We still don't know the exact number of victims, dozens, maybe hundreds. And some accounts describe him as handsome, intelligent.
Which just makes the alleged monstrosity even harder to comprehend.
Exactly. And that final detail after the hanging, he wasn't immediately burned. He got that reprieve, the burial in a church. Even in death, the ambiguity remained.
These details just add layers to an already deeply unsettling picture. This whole bizarre journey into Gilles de Rais' life. It's a chilling look at human complexity, isn't it?
Yeah.
Heroism and alleged horror in one person.
It really forces you to confront those dark corners of history, the potential for monstrosity even behind a facade of nobility or valor.
And the echoes are still here. Bluebeard, our understanding of serial killers. What really stands out to you most looking back at all this? What questions still linger?
For me, it's still that fundamental duality. How Can one person embody both celebrated bravery and, allegedly, such systematic, unimaginable cruelty? It makes you question everything about character, about the potential for good and evil coexisting.
Yeah, that contradiction is just staggering. And the gaps, the questions around the trial, the confession, it leaves this lingering unease.
Exactly. Even with all the documents, the absolute certainty feels just out of reach, which is maybe part of why the story continues to fascinate and horrify.
Well, if you want to dive even deeper into this truly, truly unhinged life, definitely check out our show notes. We've got links to resources like Georges Bataille's analysis, Alina Odio's historical account.
And even that folklore podcast, Something Wicked, for more on the darker side of tales.
Lots to explore in the Curiosity Cabinet. Thank you for joining us on this bizarre journey into the life and alleged crimes of Gilles de Rais.
It's been intense.
Until our next exploration into history's most outrageous lives, keep questioning, keep exploring.
And remember that history is often far stranger and definitely darker than fiction.